Okay.
It thinks about it. And we are finally live. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday night. I hope you are having a great week. Happy hump day. And we have a great topic for tonight. Speaking of humps and getting over humps, I have my good friend here, Jen Bordeaux, and she is with New Direction Family Law. And our topic tonight is that divorce sucks, but life afterwards doesn't. If you're on the live, give us a hashtag live. If you're on the replay, give us a hashtag replay. We're going to have some raw and real discussions about, this whole divorce thing, because you market divorce, or do you?
Yeah, we do. It almost, people might cringe at that, but when you get down to it, we do. Yeah, we have a business and we help a lot of people, but if people can't find us, then we can't help them. So yes, we do absolutely market.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of interesting because one of the things that you guys said that really stuck with me quite a while ago is, yes, you are marketing divorce, but you've never seen a happy marriage end up in divorce. Or, you've never seen people that were happily married end up divorced in this process.
Yeah. Everybody's heard the stats. Anybody watching now or in the replay, you've heard me say it, several times in different ways. You've heard me speak that we all know we have either all been through it or in some form or fashion, whether it was personally or a family member, or we know a friend or a family member or a coworker or whatnot that has gone through it. So it affects a lot of people, unfortunately. And that's a whole other ball of wax. So we can get into reasons why and all that kind of stuff. But, I think the stats are in the 40s right now. I think they dropped to the 40s, but who knows what that will look like after 2020.
Right.
But yeah, so it affects a lot of people. And we would, as much as we don't advocate for divorce. We don't sit there and say, oh, well, don't work through your problems. All the time we refer out to marriage counselors. If people come in and they're undecided or, they haven't initiated that process. We just educate someone that is either potentially facing that. Maybe their spouse has told them, but they don't want a divorce, but their spouse has mentioned it. And so now they're getting educated, or someone that is thinking about initiating a separation or divorce, that then they're getting the information that they need. And we're just like, okay, here's tools for your tool bag to make the best decision that you need for you and your family. So, but in those instances, there's usually at least one reason, if not a whole snowball of reasons, that people go their separate ways. So, and that's that's unique to each person's story and their experience. But yeah, you're right. In most situations, it's not people that are in a happy situation saying, hey, you know what, this is just going great, but I think I'll just end it. I think I just want to change. I'll just end it.
Right.
That's not the case.
No, I mean, that's just like crazy talk.
Yeah.
So, you chose the, divorce sucks, but life afterwards doesn't title tonight. That came from you. So tell me why, how you came up with that.
So, well, because one, divorce does just suck. Like we're not
absolutely, yeah.
Us in the firm, like we're not going to sugarcoat it. The attorneys, the paralegals, our other marketing person, our client relations specialist, China, none of us are going to sugarcoat it. It does. It just sucks. Whether that you've been married for 2 years, whether you've been married for 25 years, whether we've got clients that are in their 70s. So whether you've been married for 40, 50 years, like no matter what, whether it's amicable, whether there's children involved, no matter the length of the marriage, divorce just sucks. And there's a grieving process, no matter the circumstances. And pain is pain. We recently said that on an episode of our podcast. We were talking about the myth that divorce is easier if there aren't children involved, but pain is pain. And whether, again, it's something that you agree, you're still recognizing that this legal dedication or these vows that you took, that it's not working out. And those are in amicable situations. So then, of course, in the situations that it's not quite so amicable, it absolutely still just sucks. And, it's almost at times like these at 10 o'clock at night, right? That's whenever it can suck the most. Sometimes whenever you're on your own, the day is quieted down, you are alone with your thoughts, and then your mind can just spiral. And going through all of that, there's no way around it. So that's why I just wanted to put it like, yes, divorce sucks. We recognize that. We're not trying to sit here and advocate that divorce is the best thing that's ever happened to the world. But we also recognize that as bad as this may be, there is another side to it. And some people believe, and you talk that everything happens for a reason. Your stance on that is completely your own. There's my dog, one of my dogs. Hello, Theo.
Yeah, I've got it. My dog is running around too.
But no matter what, even if you're everything happens for a reason person or not, at the end, you will see a reason for it. Maybe you didn't see a reason to begin with, but you will recognize things. You will learn things about yourself. You will learn things about that relationship with that person as to, why it's a good thing. Where you are now, you will find a reason, and it's better. And you have this when you choose to accept that reality of what's happening and you start moving in a new direction, which is kind of where, the name of the firm came from. Then you open yourself up to the possibility of healing and to revisit, your independent self as to who you were before you got in this marriage, who you evolved and became during the marriage, and then who you're going to be moving forward. Maybe there were things that you wanted to do that your partner wasn't interested in doing, and now you have the opportunity to do those. Just all kinds of different things. And so, as bad as it may seem, I mean, I went through a divorce myself a couple of years ago, and gosh, I guess it's been more than that now, but time flies. And I've had people that have been calling the office that are interested in services that if it's appropriate, I will share that, because in finding that camaraderie or that strength and knowing that someone understands what you're feeling, having gone through it, then I might mention that. And I've literally had people stop me and say, just from a personal perspective, can I just ask you, does it get better? Like, because I am heartbroken right now and I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And to be able to confidently say, yes, not only from my personal experience, but from all the clients that we help, like it absolutely does get better. So, so divorce sucks, but there's life after that. Divorce is just a chapter. It's not your entire book.
Yeah. And I think that there's a very real process that you go through. And I've only been married, once, and I'm still married. Let me just say that I've been married almost 29 years. But what is interesting is we were talking before we got on that in a lot of ways, divorce, is a very traumatic event. And I mean, I can liken it in some ways to my experience with my daughter's traumatic brain injury, that there's a grieving process and a real process where you have to lean into it, accept it, and start to figure out okay, so what comes next? What do I have to do next? What's the next step? And I have a friend who's also currently going through a really tough divorce right now. And I see her working through the grief process of figuring out, okay, what does my life look like? And suddenly it doesn't look like it did before.
Yeah. And that can be very, very hard to accept, that new reality, especially if you're blindsided by it, or you were very hurt by the catalyst for the separation. It can be very difficult to say, okay, or I guess to get to a point where you stop asking, why did this happen? How could he or she do this to me? I dedicated so much to this person. We were so in love. I thought we were so happy. How could they do this to me and our children? And those may be answers that you never get. You know what I mean? Right. I think there was one thing for me that really helped, bless social media for all that it can be. And, obviously there's frustrations that come with it too. But there was one thing, you can find so many great accounts and things to follow, right? That can be healthy and healing, help you heal in your process, no matter what it is that you're going through, divorce or otherwise. Anyway, and in all of that, so I'm a big motivational quote junkie. And I remember finding this thing that said, you have to find a way to accept the apology that you're never going to get. And that was a game changer for me, because we want to feel validated whenever we're hurt, or that we feel like we've been betrayed by, especially someone like our partner that we, loved so much and, was going through life with and, tackling all these things and having children with. And so if there is some sort of betrayal or hurt, and whether that betrayal is infidelity, I think people's minds always go to that, but betrayal shows up in a lot of different ways. So whether that's infidelity, it's substance use, it's domestic abuse, other kinds of addictions. I mean, gambling, porn, like all kinds of different things. There's different elements of betrayal there. And, or someone just says, I'm not in love with you anymore, and I don't think we should be married. Like that's another, that's, get you to your core. And so it can be really hard to accept that this person that you felt closest to, I mean, that's the ultimate betrayal. And so to accept that they may never apologize to the level that you want or you hope, I mean, that's really hard to move on from. So it takes a lot of digging deep and putting some work in for yourself and for your family. But there's help. Mental health counselors are rock stars, and God bless them, because we refer to them all the time.
Well, and I mean, and that's an important thing, is that a lot of times it is our loved ones, those that are closest to us, that wound us the worst. Mm-hmm. And many times they're not going to apologize. And you have to be okay with that. Whether you stay married or you get divorced, or it's your mother, or your father, or other, close relative, a child, there's so many pieces of hurt that happen. And I think that that's just such an amazing quote, that you have to learn to accept the apology that you're never going to get. Yep.
I mean, and it's pretty to say, but, acting on it and embracing it is a whole nother animal.
Yeah. And I think you have to do that. You have to accept that apology that you never got in order to move on from the hurt of the situation, to start going through that grief process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And healing. And God bless mental health people. I mean, like, seriously, counselors and therapists are amazing.
I know. And through all of this, I mean, we at the office, I mean, we refer to mental health professionals all the time, because divorce is, I mean, the legal team is there to help you through. I mean, we take a holistic approach, but we are not mental, therapists.
No.
And so we are there to help you make the best, to represent you, protect your legal rights, and to help you make those specific decisions, in moving forward, like, long-term, not just what is fueled by emotion. So therapists can help untangle all of the emotional pieces to that help clear the fog in your brain to be able to focus, because the legal process it's not an easy one. I mean, on top of all the emotional stuff that comes with that, all of the legal jargon and financial documents that need to be provided, and, reviewing documents that your attorneys are drafting for information, like, it's just a lot. And whenever you're going through that, I mean, you're just, whether it's divorce or another, traumatic experience, I mean, you're just exhausted. You're mentally, you're emotionally exhausted. That feeds into your physical exhaustion. And I mean, you have to I know for me personally, I had to start choosing what I dedicated my energy to. I realized that I had to allow myself just to be exhausted. And there was no way that I was going to be able to do everything that I could do previous to that whenever I was in a happy state, because I wasn't. Yeah. I just had to accept that I just was not in a happy state, and it just sucks, Yeah. And so you have to pick and choose. And so anyway, so mental health counselors can really, really help with that. And it's an unbiased third party that's just there to listen. I remember there were days I would go in and see a therapist, and I was like, well, I'm feeling pretty good today. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. But I'll be damned if something didn't pop up. I'd always find something, So yeah, it can be tough to accept all of that, but that's my biggest thing, I think, in our firm is the education piece, and so that people know that they are not alone. Like, it might feel like the weight of the world is on you, and that nobody understands, and that you are just sitting alone in a corner in the darkness, cannot see the light to get out. But that is not the case. No matter how much that feels, that it feels like that it's just, fortunately, that is not the case. And there are once I finally, stopped feeling that shame, because there's an element of shame that comes with a traumatic experience like divorce. And so, just finally being able to own it and say, you know what, this is my story and here it is, laying my cards out there. This is what I'm going through. Not that I told everybody in the world by any means, but once I started to do that, I slowly felt like some of the weight coming off of me, and I was able to start, moving through that process. And we see it time and time again with clients in the office too. And so it's tough and it's hard. But that's why we advocate so much for leaning on whatever the team is that you need, whether it's coworkers, family members, therapists, your dogs. Oh my gosh, my dogs.
Yeah, right.
The best cuddlers, and I could just cry without, feeling like I was, burdening them. It's great. So whatever and then whether it's meditation, yoga, working out, just going for walks, music was a huge therapeutic outlet for me as well. So all kinds of different avenues. And we want to help people. And we've talked to, simple things like buying or selling a house isn't exactly simple, but especially if you're selling your marital home, because there's such an emotional egg that is attached to that.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a lot more than that. So it encompasses your whole life. You're literally taking two lives that were entangled together and untangling them and learning how to live separately, but also still co-parent with this person if you have kids together. So it's a lot. And I hope that people give themselves grace when they're going through that. There's no specific timeline. We're a comparative species, right? So we always want to look to who already went through a divorce, and by 2 years after, they were already married again and happily ever after. Okay, good for them. Guess what? That's not necessarily your story, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Grief doesn't have a timeline.
Nope.
It doesn't really matter what the grief is, whether you're losing a parent, losing a spouse, going through divorce, losing a child. I wish that there was a set timeline that you could say, okay, well, I'm going to, do this for this many days, and then I'm going to be fine. And then, it's going to all be hunky dory. And, there's always that moment where you think you're doing good, and then, it kind of blindsides you out of nowhere too.
Yep. I literally, because I'm all about throwing myself on the sword, I literally had one of those days yesterday, and it was because of a dream. And I don't dream that I remember, dreams that I have super often. I don't always remember them. And sometimes when I do, they're not very vivid, but I had a dream. What is today? Wednesday, Monday night, and woke up Tuesday and was automatically just in a mood about it.
Yeah.
And then when I kind of remembered more of what the dream was about and the emotional reaction I had in that dream, then reality set in. And it's almost like that grief that I felt and that pain that I felt, 3.5 years ago from the situation. I mean, obviously the dream involved my ex. The grief just hit me. It just washed over me like a big old tsunami wave. And there was nothing I could do. I just had to sit in it. And I was like, and then I just kind of like laughed and then started crying some more, because I was like, 3.5 years and this is still affecting me like this, like I've done all of this work and this healing, and it just hits you, and you literally just got to ride that wave.
Yeah.
Today I'm completely fine. I feel like I did on Monday, like knowing that all of the work and the time, I mean, they say that time heals, but time moves real slow whenever you're hurting.
Yeah, no, it does. Like, I mean, I lost my dad in 2013. And Christmas, I was a sobbing mess.
Yeah.
And it happens, and it, just because time has passed doesn't mean that things are completely healed or completely gone, and there's that waves that happen through that grief. But it doesn't mean that life isn't overall amazing, and it doesn't mean that life isn't good.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you haven't healed from that, or that you're taking you're regressing in from where
Yeah.
you've come. It's just it's a moment because like I mean that was you thought of your dad, and there's a lot of memories attached to him, and love, and obviously nostalgia, and those are very powerful emotions.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing can be at one point, like I think people get so caught up sometimes, looking at a divorce situation, and that they need to be angry at this person because they were hurt in some form or fashion. And so I just got to be angry. Well, at one point you really deeply cared for this person, and you have a lot of good memories with this person as well, theoretically. And so,
Right.
Having those moments of grief that come in, it doesn't, again, erase everything that you've done or how you have healed or how you have moved on. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I haven't moved on from this person. It just means that you're human and you have emotions, and, you went through a transitional thing in life, and it brought you back to a period in time, and it will pass too. And it's okay. Like I said, it just makes you human.
Absolutely. Yeah, somebody says, been 7 for me. It still affects me some each day. Some days just thoughts, some days overwhelming emotions, hard to erase 27 years. Absolutely.
Yeah.
27 years is a huge chunk.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a large portion of your adult life to be with someone, and to go from, and there's a lot of change, evolution, independently and as a couple, that you go through, whether it's, births of children, whether it's passing of parents, job loss, starting new things, all that kind of stuff. Like it doesn't just go away.
No, you don't, like, suddenly when you get divorced, it's not like you carve that piece of your identity like out of the middle and it's just like gone. It evolves and changes over time, but you don't just like lose all of those memories. And brainwash them that they're gone away because kids, family, homes, education. I mean, I got married at 19, so we've been married 29 years. I've been married much longer than I was not married. And I mean, I can definitely see that, a large part of who I am, because I'm definitely not the same person I was even 5 or 10 years ago. In that evolution of who we are as people. My husband made a comment recently that, a man never crosses the same river twice. And I kind of looked at him really funny because he's become very philosophical in the last couple of years, which is just like a whole other, like evolution. It's amazing to me. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, because both the river and the man have changed. And so every time, you as a person are crossing a river, the river itself has changed, but you yourself have also changed every single time you cross it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you think about, sometimes if there are maybe arguments in marriage, or let's just say you're watching like a romantic comedy or a chick flick, whatever. And, a couple's getting in an argument and they're like, oh, well, you're not the person that I married. Well, no, probably not. And, because
exactly,
you put some, like you said, you and your husband have been married since you were 19.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 35, but I have changed since I was as a 19-year-old, and that's supposed to happen. And so you've kind of, you got to take that for what it is, because they might not be the same person that you married, but you're not the same person that they married either. And you're not supposed to be. We are complex, imperfect humans. And and the things
multidimensional.
The things that we want, the things that we need, the things the interests that we have, all those kinds of things change over time. That doesn't stop just because you get married to someone.
No, absolutely. And I mean, if I look back, I'm like, okay, my 2 undergraduate degrees, 4 kids, losing all 4 of our parents, his grandparents, my grandparents, getting my master's, starting and selling multiple businesses. I mean, all of the progression that's happened. I mean, it's a lot. It's a massive part of who I am as a person. We are very much evolving creatures. And I will say a large part of who I am is because of him, because he supported me through, going back to get my MBA at Duke, which was no small feet. I mean, it's a part of who we are, you know? So even if we parted ways or he were to die tomorrow, I mean, that part of me would not cease to exist.
Yep. Yeah. It's, and it, you know, I mean, and it's, and I think about our founding partner at New Direction, who you know as well, Elizabeth. She'll be speaking at your
The summit.
the summit next month, and so New Direction was actually came out of her passion for family law, and because her husband was terminally ill and passed away in 2015, and she kind of took he was also a family law attorney, and took his legacy and like the mark that she wanted to leave on the world. And she also likened her experience in losing her husband to divorce. You know, we were talking about grief and a loss, and whatever the loss is, it's like you said earlier, it's still a loss. And you losing someone like that in your life, with the person that was your partner, I mean, it is like, to a certain extent, losing a piece of yourself. And so you've got to just, once that person's no longer in your life, then you've got to decide what piece you put back in that place. You know what I mean? Like it might be still, it's obviously still you, but there's other components now, you know, I mean, life experiences just change you, and that's okay. It would be really boring if it didn't.
Right. And, you know, and to me, it's, you know, interesting to see, you know, how she has progressed, you know, and gone forward in life. And, you know, we all do, you know, and it's really kind of scary because you see a lot of people who hit these transitions in their life, where they're in a very dark place, you know, and potentially suicidal, and, you know, having thoughts of self-harm. You know, it's a real danger at that point when you hit these transition points, because you may not see that point forward or that way forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, you know, before we went live here, you were mentioning about marketing for divorce. And that's why I mean, stuff like this, you know, just having open and real and honest conversations. You know, we don't look at divorce as our clients as just another case. You know, it may be something that we deal with every day, day in, day out, but every client's situation is unique to them. Their pain, their experience is not just the specifics of their case, but just their experience is their own. And so, you know, speaking to you openly and honestly about things like this at 10 or 10:30 or at night, or, you know, having other videos that we have on our social media channels, or information on our website, you know, different blogs and just stuff like that. And then as well as like our podcast, that's the kind of stuff that we do to market, because if you're considering separation, or you're thinking about it, or you just found out that your spouse maybe was having an affair, we go to Google, you know, sometimes it's like we trust the opinion of artificial intelligence more than we trust our own gut, or, you know, in decision making and what we should do about situations. And, you know, this is no different. You know, you go up and you Google, how do I know if my spouse is cheating, or what are signs that my spouse is cheating, or what are signs that my spouse, you know, is abusing substances or something like that. So, or has a gambling addiction or whatever. And generally you're not going to do that in an open space with your spouse in the room, or you're going to be doing it on your phone very discreetly. But you're definitely going to be online, or more probable than not, that you're going to be online looking for that information and answers to those questions. Whenever something like this happens, the uncertainty, the storm of uncertainty that happens in your life as well as in your mind is just all encompassing. It becomes overwhelming, and you're just so obsessed with, what does this mean? What do I do from here? How do I go through this? And you just want answers, and you want you want the pain to go away, and you want to know what you can do to move through it, and how you can make it stop, and what's going forward. And we want to do what we can to put that kind of information out there to get people help.
Yeah.
So
And,
they can make it through.
and a lot of times I see women posting in one of the large Facebook groups that you and I are in. And, there was a particular post last night that I tagged Jen in at 2:00 in the morning.
I did not see it until this morning.
Well, yeah, of course not, because I'm the crazy one. But they were asking all these questions about child support. And I mean, my only response when I see stuff like that is, I know that this is a really difficult situation. But this is one of those where you need to talk to an attorney.
Yeah. And I do love the community of that, of, this Facebook group and others that I've seen of ladies jumping on board and saying, oh, you should do this, or you can do this. And some of the information is correct and helpful. And I love just the support that she was receiving in response to her, and kudos to her for putting that out there, it's like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And my POS X isn't, financially supporting his son like he's supposed to. And so I loved all the support in the community of that. But to your point, yes, some of the information that was there could have been correct, but you got to make sure you know what's going on with your situation, because the smallest of things, I always say in law, what the big print giveth, the small print taketh away. So the smallest things in your situation can be very, very different than someone else's.
Right.
So you don't always want to generalize, and one size does not fit all in divorce.
No, or in marriage.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I mean, this is an interesting comment. If you're not working on your marriage, you're working on your divorce. Yes and no. I think it depends. I think that marriage is definitely a process.
It is, and marriage is definitely
It's
a process.
Work in progress, always.
Yeah, and it takes hard work, but sometimes you also just gotta stop thinking so much about the work and just enjoy where you are in life.
Right?
Enjoy your marriage, enjoy your family, enjoy your partner, and not always think that something is wrong and needs to be worked on. Yes, it is absolutely. It takes hard work and dedication and commitment in many, many facets in the relationship, and the balancing act of life marriage and career and parenting and I don't know, just self-care as well, throwing that in there.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of self-care that goes into working on a marriage. As somebody who's got 4 kids, and we've had our fair share of 3-ring circuses in 29 years. Yeah, there's a lot of, individual care that has to happen, and working on things together. But I definitely have to say that there's a large portion of working on yourself. That might be 80% of it.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're trying to work from a half-filled or empty cup of your own, you're not going to have much to give, or I don't know how dedicate, or the energy, and you've got to feel good about yourself and where you are. And I think sometimes people lose that. I don't want to say a lot of times. I think there's been a lot of literature and discussions around changing that idea, and that people get together and just lose themselves in each other.
Right.
You're still 2 independent people that have your own thoughts and desires and interests and things like that. So you've got to nurture that. You've got to nurture your own stuff.
Yeah. I will make the comment that when I started focusing on myself first, things got a lot better.
Yeah, I'd imagine. And it can be hard. Oh my gosh, it can be so hard. As females, what society always tells us to be the caregivers and to take care of others and make sure other people's needs are met. Well, what about our needs?
Yeah. I nearly died as a result of that.
Oof.
That was part of my weight loss journey. Seriously, it was, always taking care of the husband, always taking care of the house, always taking care of the kids, always taking care of the parents, always taking care of the job, making the money, not caring what I ate, because I was so focused on everything else that I got, and the stress hormones and everything else. I got to 427 pounds. When the doctor basically said, okay, you're probably going to die if you don't. I had to become Huh?
I said, talk about a wake-up call.
Tiny little wake-up call. But, but it had a very material impact on my relationship with my husband as well, because I had to put myself first for once in our marriage. It was the first time in many, many years that I had to say, look, what I'm doing here has to happen.
Yeah. And how hard was that for you?
Oh, it's terrible. It was terrible. It was extremely hard. Working out twice a week and going to the gym and going in and working out with a mutual friend of ours, Coach Chris, and barely being able to get my foot over the middle divider thing on the recumbent bike when I first started. Now the only time I have trouble with it if I'm standing on my own shoelaces. But going through that process, it was very interesting. Learning to not care as much about what everybody else wanted or needed, but focusing on myself meant that I was going to be able to take care of them. That's a really hard realization, that I wasn't able to take care of my marriage or my children, properly unless I started taking care of myself. So sometimes you have to be selfish.
Yeah. And is it really that? And that's not being selfish, right? Like, I mean, we call it that, but it's not. It's being self-aware. And honestly, and it's not being selfish, because just hearing everything you just said about then how you focusing on you to take the time to care for yourself then trickled into your marriage and into, your ability to, care for your children. And I mean, just everything. I would imagine
into my business and
I was just saying, like, even your mental state and emotional state and just the wherewithal for everything. That's not selfish, even though, and I'm not picking on you for that, because we all label that, you know what I mean? We all call it that. Well, I'm
get it.
Being selfish and taking care of me. Like, okay, well, maybe we should start changing that narrative,
Right. No, absolutely. When I started, choosing meals that I was serving the family based on what I needed to be eating versus what I thought they wanted to eat, the entire family's eating habits changed. The entire family's health changed. It's actually very funny that what I was eating to lose weight was how my son has gotten up to a healthy weight. It's so important to focus on, yourself. And I mean, the old adage, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. In our house, it was very true.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a friend, and she's a marriage coach, and she's started kind of a second limb underneath the umbrella of her coaching business called the Hero Husband Project. And she's getting ready to write a second book, and she's actually looking for gentlemen that are in their marriage to maybe for her to talk to them about, like, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but overall the success of their relationship. And she's like, we always kind of have that, happy wife, happy life mentality. And we joke about it, but we say it all the time. And she was like, but by doing that, you're excluding half of the person in your relationship, or if it's same-sex relationship, same thing goes. And, and she was like, so we got to start. She was like, both people in the relationship are very important to make it a successful and happy and healthy relationship. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect all the time by any means. And so she's with this Hero Husband Project. She was like, guys, you aren't bad guys. You just got to understand that you got to learn that leaving the dish in the sink isn't actually what is pissing off your wife. Leaving the dish in the sink represents more to her than what the actual dish in the sink means in the literal sense to you, like small things like that. And so I just love that, because I'm like, that's so true. We always get to, one person's not happy. So, it's not working out, but it's
right. No, and focusing, both of us had to focus on our own happiness. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if this has turned into a more philosophical husband on your end, like, that's awesome too.
Yeah, it's been really funny. He gave me, the Art of Happiness for my birthday, which was really quite a shock, I'll be honest, and talking to him, I'm like, whoa, who are you? What have you done to my husband. I kind of like it.
Yeah, but that's fun, and you focusing on you and finding out these things, focusing on your health, and then the other things that it opened up for you. I'm sure you either rediscovered or just discovered new things about yourself. And so that's fun for you. I'm sure it was fun for him. And then the same, that goes both ways for you guys, which I think is awesome. And,
Yeah, totally.
in marriages, it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to have the times that, you're just like, oh man, I really just don't want to look at you right now. And
True.
that's also okay. Like you're not happy with your coworkers all the time. You're not happy with your pets all the time. So, I don't know how you would expect to be happy with, your spouse that is there. It's, for better or for worse. So you got to accept those worst times too.
Yeah. And, Aida says that another thing, marriage is not 50-50. It's much more like 100-100. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, and you have to understand that, one of the things that I've had to learn, and that's been an interesting learning experience through my life, is that my education doesn't define who I am. My job does not define who I am. So when I was laid off in 2005 as part of a massive, resource reduction at IBM, the women tended to take the layoff much better than the men did because we didn't associate that with our identity in the same way. But, I think that a lot of times our identity is so tied up in wife, mother, those types of things, that when, we lose a child or, we lose a spouse, we've lost that piece of who we are. And that's really hard. We really have to confront that. And I think that that's, one of the biggest challenges that we face, is that when you start losing that piece of your identity and where you're wrapped up. And I've seen it, I see it with men too. Mm-hmm. But definitely with men, the loss of the career, it's fascinating when they lose a job. The wrapped up in the headspace is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point about the piece of identity, especially if you've, like you and your husband being together for 29 years, and then the person that commented earlier about the 27 years and whatnot. I mean, that is a big piece of your identity. And so whenever that changes so drastically, you do ask that question, well, who am I without this person? Mm-hmm. In my personal experience, we were not married for that long, but we had, for all intents and purposes, grown up together and been in each other's lives for many, many years, and then dated for several, and then finally got married later on. And so even though we weren't married for that long, this was still a person that, now that the marriage was ending, was no longer going to be in my life. And so it was still that, well, who am I without, it's kind of like losing a limb that you got to learn how to regrow.
Right. Well, yeah. And when you lose a job, you have to learn how to regrow the job feature. Mm-hmm. But everybody I know who's been through a job loss, the vast majority of people I know who have been through that kind of a job loss come out of it and say, I came out of that event stronger. And I hear the same thing a lot from my friends who have been through divorce. Mm-hmm.
Well, going through those kind of things that force you to, rediscover that part of your identity, or create a new piece to your identity, in that you build a resilience and a strength that you didn't know that you had. And Absolutely. So then you're like, oh, that feels kind of like some Kevlar, like a little bit of bulletproofness going on there, whenever you come through that, because you prove to yourself, and it does build a level of confidence that you didn't have before. And there's a lot of strength in that, and empowerment in that. And, dating after divorce is a whole other ball of wax. And I'm actually really excited. I'm talking next week to she's a confidence coach and dating strategist based out of LA. And she was she was a therapist for 10 years prior to that. And I'm so looking forward to, I'm gonna be like taking notes myself about about dating after divorce, because she's going to be talking all about, the confidence piece of it and like learning how to flirt again and all that kind of stuff. So, but all that plays into it, because whenever you go through a job loss or a divorce or something like that, like you take a hit to your confidence. You're like, all right, well, I was doing this for X amount of years. I was with this person for X amount of years. So now what, so it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, totally.
And it sucks sometimes.
But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Don't go towards that light.
Yeah, that would not be a good light to go towards. And Marilyn Slinkman says dating after divorce is awesome. And Tracy Taylor says happy mama. And Marilyn says hero husband. Love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess can I say her name? Her name is Leslie Dories, is the therapist, and she's on Facebook and stuff, and she's got the Hero Husband Project. You can hear her talk about that. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. If you share that information with me, I'll post it in the group and on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Shout out Leslie. She'll love that.
I love it. Yeah. Cool. Love it. Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe we can hook her up with a few victim candidates.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Jen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Haley. This has been great.
Fun.
Just to chat about life.
I love it. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.